Welcome back to Beyond the Tales, and today we are talking episode 3, False Lizard. So, this is all about leaning into the horror of a world where prehistoric dinosaurs are running loose. And I really, really love the idea of that. You know, we're gonna have our lovely encounters, we're gonna have our emotional encounters like the Ankylosaurus for season 1, but equally, there are gonna be encounters with these animals that feel like something plucked straight from a horror film. And so that's what I really wanted to try and achieve with False Lizard. So it was really important to me coming into this second season that we paid tribute to the wider canon of Jurassic, and that included Camp Cretaceous. So I wanted to make sure we paid tribute to the show here with the appearance of the Nothosaurus, which is obviously a really interesting animal in its own right. It doesn't get much screen time in the show, so it was really fun to write more of a horror-esque sequence with this animal. Granted, it only appears briefly in our audio drama as well, but it was fun to integrate it in what I felt was quite a unique way. And in this episode, I also wanted to pay tribute to a bit more of Steven Spielberg's work. So we have a ship called the Orca that appears in this episode, which is obviously a nod to Jaws. So that was really fun to sort of throw in there and just give us a little tribute for those of you who will have picked up on that detail. So I think crucially that this episode was all about leaning more into the darker side of Jurassic. We do see that a lot. We have a lot of people who want to see more dark Jurassic, and I'm not talking about the forum from Chaos Theory. So it was a lot of fun to really explore that and hopefully give you something that feels a little bit more like a horror story in the Jurassic universe. You know, again, I created Tales because for this initial run, we're following these characters, but the idea is this is an expansive universe where we can tell standalone stories. So if you want more horror, do let me know because it's something I'd love to explore further. So, with all of that said, to find out a little bit more about how Ben Morrison almost met his end, we're gonna catch up with Jared Ransom. So, I'll let you listen to that interview now. Okay, so Jared, reflecting on episode 3, which obviously has the Nothosaurus in quite a horrific sequence in some swampland, I would say.
Yeah.
I guess firstly, how did you react to seeing the Nothosaurus come back from Camp Cretaceous?
I have been eagerly anticipating some Camp Cretaceous little tidbits and cameos,
Yeah,
and this was one that really excited me when I first read it on the page. I'm like, oh yes, we are bringing because that episode of Camp Cretaceous was really dipped into like the horror aspect of
yeah,
being on that island. Like that is really an intriguing kind of turn for the crew over there, and so I was really excited to have the Nothosaurus back because it speaks to kind of a hidden danger that just can't really be seen because it's going to be underwater. You don't know where it could be. It could be here one minute and here the next, and then it just kind of pops in on you. And so I was really excited to see the potential for the Nothosaurus, just what it could do, just in terms of the storytelling aspect, but just it's always been a cool creature, and it was
yeah.
fun to have that in the story too.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing for me, really, was actually the idea that the Nothosaurus in Camp Cretaceous kind of appears and then disappears, and that's it. It's never really in the story for that longer period of time. So it was nice to kind of give it the limelight a little bit, I think.
Mhm.
And I
Absolutely.
think it's really interesting because you touch on kind of the sort of almost horror-esque tone of that. And that was something that I really wanted to do with this episode, was almost lean more into it kind of being that isolated horror flick. So what did you think about the fact that this does lean into that horror-esque tone a little bit more?
I mean, for those who caught our first ever episode, it was Halloween. It was on Halloween, so that was we are all about the horror here for Tales. But no, I really loved it. I thought that the story and the adventure up to this point was very, it had that basic Jurassic tone. Like it was kind of, it had that adventure, it had that suspense, but the the horror side of being in that kind of situation, not knowing where the danger might be coming from, being in a very vulnerable spot for these characters because you're walking in water and just not being able to see all around you. That was cool to kind of bring back into it. And I think the people that listen to that and just kind of put themselves in that position can really kind of feel it in your chest. You can feel that just kind of you're tensing up a little bit and just knowing that the danger could come out of nowhere, and
Yeah.
it could you could be fine, and then boom, something crazy happens. So I was really excited to kind of dive into that side of it, and obviously Ben has a rough go at it, but he I think just being able to kind of tell that story from that kind of environment was really kind of a cool change from the typical you're facing the animal, you're facing the creature, and then the story continues. Like this is different. This is a new aspect of the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. I really like the idea, kind of when I was writing it, of having these characters ending up on this bit of land where there's pockets of water everywhere, so you don't know where it's going to pop out of. Just because to me, it's kind of like dinosaur whack-a-mole in a
Back, I'm
sense.
just gonna say
Yeah.
whack. Like nope, nope, it's over there. Like,
Exactly. And there's just like something that's really, really fun about that, I think. So I think when it comes to that horror tone, there is a lot more of a more graphical undercurrent here. So obviously we have the scene where they find the person's wallet that's in a pile of bones, and then you also have all of the kind of vehicles that are just sat abandoned in the parking lot for this area. So what did you think of kind of those more graphic details? Were you quite surprised by them?
uh, I was to a sense, but then it kind of also took me back to the first movie where they come up to the T-Rex paddock after the escape,
Yeah,
and they mention, "Oh, this looks like Gennaro." Oh, I think this was too, and it
yeah,
was obviously referencing two very separate parts of his body.
yeah,
Um, so it really brought me back to that moment, and it's definitely more gruesome, but it also lends more to that horror aspect of it because you see that and you picture that and you know something bad happened.
yeah,
Don't know exactly what or kind of what led up to that or what happened next. That sort of
yeah,
deal. Just know that something very horrific took place here, and you have some identifying features, and that's it. And
yeah,
just to have your character kind of face that and know that you have to keep going into the same kind of danger, that is that's a it's actually kind of a challenging kind of headspace to put yourself into because because hopefully nobody has to face that kind of danger themselves, but just to kind of like it's like okay, Ben sees a wallet and a body, and it has to keep going to find what happened to the body.
yeah.
Okay, it kind of freaks yourself out a little bit. So yeah, I was really kind of I was happy to see kind of took that turn because it creates that much more suspense to it, and it's those details that really can just bring people into an audio story like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's that sense of foreshadowing, and I think it's interesting because you touch on obviously Ben seeing that and thinking, well, I've still got to go into that, and I think that's the challenge so many first responders face is actually going into horrific situations and thinking, okay, this is really bad, but I have a job to do here. I have to put that to one side,
Right.
and still go into that. And I think kind of on that tone of more sort of horrible situations. You alluded to it earlier, but in this episode, Morrison very nearly dies. So what are your thoughts in terms of what that says about the kind of encounters that the duo are dealing with in this season compared to season one?
Yeah, there's definitely an escalation. obviously Ben is a very, experienced, ranger with the team. He's been through a lot of different experiences and situations. And I mean, heck, he went face to face with an Allosaurus in season one. So, but he came away from that rather unscathed. They all do.
Yeah.
This is really one of the first times where the main character is injured or put in a, well, they're always in a life-threatening situation, but their life is literally hanging by the balance. And it was a moment where, Ben having to kind of almost come to grips that he might die here.
Mm.
Um, and it is a challenging moment, and it's something that would change anybody. Um, but yeah, it's definitely showcasing the sense of escalation because you're noticing that the danger is not just face to face with animals; it's face to face with creatures in an environment, and they're looking to do something, and you're kind of invading their space too.
Yeah.
And you don't know what a creature brought back to life is going to be like when you're invading their kind of assumed territory. um, and so Ben has a lot of history working with different sorts of animals, but this is an entirely new beast, quite literally. So he's just kind of trying to base his efforts on what he's done in the past, and then this kind of sneaks up on him and almost costs him his life. And it's even for an experienced person, that can shake you to the core, and kind of change your whole outlook on a lot of different things and life in general. But yeah, I was kind of, it's weird to say, I was kind of happy to see him put in the spot, because he has always kind of been this invulnerable hero type. He kind of comes in, handles the situation, and moves on. This almost takes his life.
Yeah.
So it is a completely different world, from what he's been used to before.
I think you kind of touch on one of my sort of core gripes with storytelling as well, which is the idea that you have these characters who are completely invulnerable to any kind of consequence. And sort of throughout this series, really, it's quite important to me. It feels grounded and it feels real, and that means that actually stuff doesn't always go according to plan, right? You're gonna get hurt in the line of duty. I think it's interesting because I was going to ask you how you feel it will impact him going forward, but from the sounds of just what you've said, it's something that he's likely to carry with him, I sense.
Yeah, I mean, it would for anybody. I mean,
Yeah,
even someone as experienced as him would carry the scars of a significant event like that. Um, like, yes, he's probably going to be ready to get into the next sequence, the next action, but is he looking over his shoulder next time a little bit
yeah,
more than has been before? Is he kind of relying on other people a little bit more than he has been before? He becomes, more vulnerable in a sense, not
yeah,
that invulnerable hero that he may have been in the past. And obviously he's been in rough spots before. He's lost a partner before the show even got going, and we dove a little bit into that in season one, but never kind of, that was kind of it. Like, he just kind of, you knew he's had some rough spots,
yeah.
but never like himself. He's kind of gotten the okay side of things up until this point. So yeah, it's going to stick with him. I think he's going to be a lot more cautious, and a lot more, open about the fragility of a life, because things can change in the snap of a finger.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it shapes things going forward. I think on that note, I teased that our next episode, so episode 4, features another Camp Cretaceous creature, or at least I should have teased that. I think I should have said that at some point. But for anyone who doesn't know, this is not the only time you're going to see a Camp Cretaceous creature. So there is one in the next episode. And Jared, I'm going to ask you a slightly difficult question, I feel,
Mm.
which is how would you sum up the creature from the next episode in one word?
Ooh. Well, I'll say the word, but I also want to say I think as a group we're all just really excited to get some of these Camp Cretaceous
Yeah.
creatures into the show. Like in general, I think we all really love kind of seeing the new creatures in that show and how they're interacting with people. So to have them in our show is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I'll one word and maybe one action. Toro.
So yeah, absolutely leaving everything up to the imagination, guys. You have no idea what's coming.
No, I mean it could be it could be bumpy.
Yes,
just running around.
yeah.
You got to kind of lead him somewhere.
It's actually Grim back from the dead as a zombie baryonyx. Yeah.
Oh, is this the Jurassic World Walking Dead
Yes.
cross that we've been
Yes,
working?
it is. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
got
finally
it.
happening. Jared, this has been a lot of fun. Do you have anything else you want to share with people about episode 3 before we get out of here?
It is really like we talked about before. It is leaning heavy into the horror aspect, and it's more of a gruesome tale of what can happen in situations like this. But it also is a very key point to where the story's going from here. It really kind of grounds everything in a sense of reality, and these characters are in a true sense of danger, and this episode really showcases that in droves.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So I think everyone's going to enjoy it, and yeah, it's just going to be a great kind of breakaway point to where the rest of the season is going to go.
Hopefully you have enjoyed it if you've already listened to it at the time of watching this. I am just going to ask you very briefly one final question, which is in the script, did you catch the other Spielberg reference?
I probably did, and was it a Jaws reference?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the one I was thinking about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So yes, I did catch the Jaws reference. I
Good.
appreciated that.
Good. So I'll have explained that at the start of this section for people watching, but I'm glad you picked up on that. Cool, right? Jared, thank you so much for this. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hope you guys enjoy.
And as those of you who have been watching these behind the scenes episodes know, at the end we love to give you a little tease for what's coming next week. And I will just say, in next week's episode, you're meeting a familiar character and also another familiar dinosaur from Camp Cretaceous. From their perch high above the ground in the warehouse, they could hear a man with a thick Russian accent talking on the phone.
Dmitri, I want you to make sure that you follow her people from the airport. I know she has said that she is willing to pay a handsome price for the carnivore, enough for me to get several more for our own collection. But I don't trust her. You heard the stories about her and how she operates. She's notorious in the metal black market.